Welcome to another episode of Wake Up and Dream. We are so excited to have you here today, and we're diving into a little, I would say, a little more challenging quote today. And this quote is from the famous Winston Churchill, and he said, "Success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm." Oh my gosh, girls, what do you think of that? At first blush, what comes to your mind?
Gosh, I'd have to say this one, we were talking just briefly before we started, like this one's difficult for me. I don't know if it's my personality or my paradigms, but like most people, we hate to fail. Like I hate trying something, especially something new, and then it not working out the way I had planned or thought out in my head. I'm such a planner and I pro and con everything until I'm blue in the face. And then when it doesn't work out, I'm like, nope, that's just not going to work. That's not for me. I can't do that. I don't like this type of exercise. I can't start writing my book. I don't know how to do this, or like whatever the topic, whatever the new journey is. For me, it's very hard to stay motivated, to stay positive, and to really dig deep into the main goal, the ultimate goal that I had in the beginning of a process. Because some of us, like some of our goals, I don't know about you guys, but like some of them are smaller that won't take, more than a week to accomplish. Other goals are, maybe 2 years, 5 years, 10 years to reach really where we want to be. And I struggle. I struggle when it doesn't work out the first time. It's something I've been working on after being at Ignite You with you gals, with Julie Ciardi, and really breaking down our goals into smaller goals and not having a timeline, I think has changed the way I look at failure, because I've always been taught to, reach goals by a certain time. I don't know if you gals have tried to like change that thought process as well, whether it's, your fitness goals or personal goals or relationship goals, like having a specific thing met by the end of August, and then August comes and you feel like a failure. I don't know about, what do you guys, any tag alongs with that and your mindset as well?
I definitely think, Kelly, adding timing adds pressure, unnecessary pressure to goals. I want to hone in on the word success, and I want to bring in another quote just to, why not, right? So the Earl Nightengale quote is one of my favorites, that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal or worthy goal. And I really want to narrow in on that, because I feel like it's important to realize what success actually means. And I think this is also what you're getting at with that timing as well, too. Like you're seeing the timing of that goal being achieved, but being successful and having success is really that progressive realization. It's that journey to that goal being achieved. Achieving
Right.
that
And
goal
success could be different for you, different from me, different from Lisa, and from our listeners, because we all have our own personal lives and professional lives. So my success is different from yours, which is so key. I'm so glad you're bringing this up, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that like going from one failure to another, like Winston Churchill, like it's kind of the same concept. It's, you need to fail forward in what you're progressing toward in order to realize the success of having that worthy ideal or that worthy goal. Easier said than done. I know there's a lot of mindset and all of that work within there that needs to happen. And it's not an easy thing to take those failures with a grain of salt and kind of move on to the next step. But once you dive into what success actually means, it is absolutely mandatory that you fail in order to get there. There's no other way to reach those goals and no other way to be successful.
I completely agree. And here's another like lens to look at it through is any word that's in the dictionary. Let's take the word failure, for instance. Failure is just a word, right? How we perceive it is the story that we're telling ourselves. We as a culture have always viewed failure as a negative. And so we have this fear of failure because we think it's a bad thing. Well, if you picture this in light of Edison and the light bulb, he failed over 10,000 times. He failed. What if he considered, and what if his words were, "Oh, I'm a failure." Then what?
I know, right? Like, where would we be without electricity? That's so crazy to think. But he could have given up on his fourth try, on his 100th try, but he didn't. And it's almost like if you don't fail, you're not learning, you're not growing. And I forget that sometimes when I do look at my goals and I haven't accomplished something that I wish, right, that we wish would have happened sooner. But when you stop and think about, like, you've learned so much in the process, and there's never really failure until you quit and give up. It's like failing forward and growing and using those tools, um, to grow. Like, it's so important to learn from everything that you're trying and doing. And yes, you can kind of pivot and add some things and take away maybe some things that aren't actually working. But I think growth from the failure, like Thomas Edison, like, he was learning every single time. And that applies to us, right? In business, parenting, marriage. Like, we learn all the time on a daily basis things that work and things that don't work.
So the other word that I want to dig into in this quote is enthusiasm, because, everybody, I think we recognize the need for failure and the need for learning and the need for continuing down that path. But doing that with enthusiasm, like I said before, is like way easier to read this quote than to actually put it into practice. So enthusiasm is intense and eager enjoyment, interest, or approval. So thinking about that a little bit more, like, I don't know if either of you have a moment in life or business as you are progressing toward a goal where you experienced a failure and then you still felt this enthusiasm toward reaching your goal. Was there something that like comes to mind where it was like, okay, that didn't work, but let me just take a look at this, see why it didn't work, and move on to the next thing? Do you guys have experiences like that where you maintained that enthusiasm?
For me, I can
I'll jump in with that one because yes, like I said in the beginning, I always get so discouraged if something doesn't work, if something doesn't go right. But yeah, it's like just training your brain to know to stay enthusiastic because you're working towards something you really want in life. We're trying to, build our lives by design and not default. And it's just kind of getting into the routine, I think, of recognizing when we get disappointed, right? That's inevitable. It's going to happen in our life. Things aren't going to work out. But knowing where you want to go and where you want to be a month from now, 10 years from now, it doesn't really matter. But yes, that enthusiasm for building a life. You guys, that's what we're doing. And it's so important. That's what we're encouraging our listeners so much is don't go through life like default, like, oh, this is what parenting looks like. This is what a marriage looks like. This is what my network marketing business, I've heard all the things. Oh, I've tried this workout. I've tried to lose 10 pounds. But it's like keeping your mind clear and happy of the end goal and that it's worth it. You're worth it. Keeping that enthusiasm is so, so important.
Can I give you like a really current example that I'm living through right now?
Yes, please share.
So my husband and I recently decided that we want to invest in an investment property, and we are trying to figure out what it looks like, and all of the things. My parents have a place in South Carolina, so we are looking like near their complex because then we obviously will be up here full time. We would have them down there to kind of keep an eye on things. And we put an offer in on a place last week. But
What? Oh my gosh, this is so exciting, Sarah. Oh my
I know,
goodness.
it's so
Nice.
cool. And it was a very quick, I mean, I hadn't even told you guys that this was in the works. So it was definitely make decisions quickly, right? So we did put an offer in on a place, and unfortunately we were beat out. The market is hot. I think it was on the market for like maybe a day and a half. Like it was super fast. But even though we were not successful in that attempt at getting an investment property, we are really enthusiastic. We have our search. We're super excited about this opportunity. We are recognizing that maybe that place wasn't the best fit for us and that there's something else out there. We're keeping our options open. We have searches set up. We are in contact with realtors down there, and we are taking steps forward. Despite having that initial, like, we had all this buildup of an excitement, and then like 24 hours later, they were like, sorry, no go. So it was, definitely an initial letdown, but our enthusiasm about this goal that we now have, even though it's like a goal that came out of nowhere, like we didn't really have this on our radar. And then we were just like, well, let's do it. So, the goal came out of nowhere, but the enthusiasm despite that is still there.
I love that so much. Congratulations just on the pursuit. And I think you nailed it, Sarah, because if your end goal is, and Kelly, you were saying this, like if we have that in mind, it doesn't matter if things don't go exactly the way we thought they should, because oftentimes it's like, in my opinion, it's like God saving us from maybe, some unforeseen circumstances, and there's something better that's waiting. And so that is such an exciting example that you have just shared. I know for me in my direct sales business, I remember years ago as I was really starting to dream, starting to wake up to the possibilities of making this my full-time job, not having to go back and teach in politically craziness, all of the things. And that was my vision, but I would have parties and I would have experiences that were like terrible. Like I would come home and I'm like, uh I didn't make enough to pay for my gas. Like seriously, like that was a failure in my opinion. Like I didn't get any bookings, I didn't get any, hardly any sales. It didn't go the way I wanted, and I could have called it a failure. I could have went home and thought, maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe I, just don't have what it takes to make direct sales, income that's worthy. But my bigger vision was the driver, right? That success was a picture that I had created of not having to go back and work the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 4 and, you know, have all that stress.
Absolutely. And you probably learned so much from that time and that experience. And maybe you knew some things about that event that worked, and some things maybe that you could have changed and added to your next event that then made it absolutely amazing. And I think that's where we need to think about, like you said, you could have placed a failure tag on that moment. But instead you remembered, I think that is so key, remembering the end goal and where you really, really want to be and where you want your business to be, and who you can help along the way. I also think that, like, sometimes the success, the failure, the enthusiasm sometimes isn't about us personally. It's about helping and sharing with others about an amazing opportunity or just your experiences. And I think that too, like, we kind of get wrapped up in ourselves and not remembering who we can help or who we can inspire along the way as well. Because again, going back to Thomas Edison, like, he could have given up, but he's like, oh my gosh, this could be so cool. And so many people could, like benefit from what he was trying to dream up. It's so important for him to get going. And it wasn't just him, like, I'm going to be this guy who, does all these things and accomplishes big things. Like, he wanted it for other people too, which I think is something important to remember.
And Lisa, I love that how you related this quote back to your business and your goal and your main vision. Because if you're reading this quote, like success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm, the piece, like enthusiasm is really all about the goal. You need to remain enthusiastic about the goal and not placing that focus and that energy on the failure, because that was one task toward your goal. And the fact that you were able to like compartmentalize like how you were feeling to like a particular event, like, yeah, obviously you're going to be bummed that you didn't make money during that event, but your enthusiasm toward your goal didn't waver in that moment just because of that one thing.
Exactly. And we as a society culture in school, I mean, we have goals set until we become adults, right? And then we have the goal of graduating, and then we have the goal of picking out a college, then we have a goal of graduating from college, a goal of getting married, a goal of having kids, owning our house. Those are all goals that society, for instance, kind of just puts out there, like, these are what you do, right? But what happens then? What happens when you're me and your kids are going to be out of the house here in a very short time? What goals do I have, right, that aren't linked to being a mom or a wife or, all of that? I want to bring in, and I can't pull up her name, so you guys are going to have to help me. She is the originator and creator of Spanx. Help me out. What's her name? No? Well,
it's Sara something, isn't it?
yes, I think it is. So I listened to
Sara Blakely.
Oh, yes.
And
Sara
she spells
Blakely.
it the same way that I spell it, Sara. So I should know that. I know
Awesome.
it was a Sarah.
Yes. So Sara Blakely, her dad was kind of like a genius in a lot of ways, because he defined failure in their household as a positive thing. Like, he applauded failure. Like, he expected of them. He was disappointed if they didn't fail, kind of thing. It like turned the whole like turned it on its head. And she shares how when she was a kid, when they would sit around the dinner table and kind of just talk about their day, talk about how things went, every night their dad would say, "So tell me, how did you fail today?" It was an expectation, because that's the only way you learn,
Oh my
right?
gosh, I love that. I did not know that story about them together. Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
Right?
It is
So
like just
cool.
changing how you're thinking about it. Like, yes, what did you do today? What did you try that didn't work out? That you failed, and what did you learn from it? I think that's so, so important. Oh my gosh, Lisa, thank you for sharing that. That is like spot on. So key.
This was so, so great. And I would love to hear from our listeners. How did you guys fail today? Because I think that question is super important that you're asking, Lisa. And I feel like, I mean, I know in certain cases with my kids, I do ask them about their failures as well, but I feel like I need to stress that important point more. So I feel like if any of our listeners out there would love to share with us, please reach out and let us know, how did you fail today? How did you feel? And are you still working toward that worthy goal of yours? So message us. We'd love to hear. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we hope to see you back here next week for another episode and another quote. And until then, wake up and dream.